Every December, the world fills with lights. Streets glow, bells ring, smiles appear on faces that have forgotten the cold. We tell ourselves this is the season of kindness, but long before stockings were hung, long before Santa Claus became a symbol of joy, winter had another visitor. He did not arrive with gifts. He came with chains that echoed through snow-covered streets, with bells that did not celebrate, but warned. Parents whispered his name to restless children. Doors were locked not against the cold, but against him. They called him Krampus, a shadow that walked beside Christmas. Not a demon born of evil, but a creature born of fear, discipline, and the ancient belief that joy must be earned. And though the world now pretends he is only a myth, every winter, when the nights grow long and conscience grows quiet, some shadows still remember how to walk, long before Christmas had a name, long before songs softened the winter nights. Europe was a land ruled by cold. Winters were not gentle seasons, they were trials. Snow swallowed villages. Darkness arrived early and stayed long. Food ran thin. Fire became life itself. And in that world, fear was not an enemy. Fear was a teacher. Among the forests and frozen valleys, ancient people spoke of horned spirits, beings born not of evil, but of survival. They believed nature watched them, judged them, rewarded order, and punished chaos. These spirits wore the shape of animals because animals endured what humans could not. Horns symbolized strength, hooves, endurance, chains, restraint. From this belief, Krampus emerged, not as a monster lurking for pleasure, but as a necessary fear, walking the boundary between human behavior and natural consequence. Children were not warned with soft words. They were warned with stories, stories of a figure who saw disobedience as danger. Because in winter, one careless act could mean death for all. Krampus was not meant to be loved. He was meant to be remembered in a world without law, without light, without mercy from the cold. Krampus represented something harsh but honest. That survival demanded discipline. That order was protection. That fear, when respected, could keep a community alive. And so, while fires burned low and winds howled beyond wooden doors, people whispered his name, not as a curse, but as a warning. Because in those ancient winters, the cold was unforgiving, and the spirits who ruled it were never kind. As centuries passed, the old world began to change. Where once villagers lit fires to honor the spirits of winter, now crosses rose, and churches replaced the old rituals. The old ways were fading, but the lessons of fear and consequence still lingered. But fear does not vanish so easily. When Christianity spread across Europe, it did not erase the old beliefs. Instead, it absorbed them. The horned spirits of winter were not destroyed. They were reshaped. From this transformation emerged St. Nicholas, a figure of generosity, a bearer of gifts, a symbol of mercy and reward. But St. Nicholas never walked alone. Beside him moved a shadow, familiar, feared, and deeply understood. Krampus. Where St. Nicholas rewarded obedience, Krampus enforced consequence. Where one offered warmth, the other reminded people of the cold. This pairing was not accidental. It was intentional. Because morality in the ancient mind was never gentle. It was a balance. Children learned that good behavior brought gifts, but misbehavior carried a cost. St. Nicholas represented hope. Krampus represented accountability. Together, they formed a complete lesson. That light without shadow loses meaning, and mercy without consequence loses power. On winter nights, villagers did not speak of one without the other. They understood that joy was protected by fear, and celebration was guarded by discipline. Krampus was not the enemy of St. Nicholas. He was his shadow, and shadows exist only because light does. There was one night each year when fear was no longer whispered. It was invited. On the evening of December 5th, as daylight faded early and winter tightened its grip, villages across the Alps prepared for Krampusnacht. Fires were lit, not for warmth alone, but for protection. Masks carved from wood waited in silence. Horns were polished. Chains were lifted from the ground and tested, their cold metal ringing like a warning. As darkness fell, the bells began. Not the joyful chime of churches, but heavy, uneven sounds that echoed through narrow streets. Men cloaked themselves in fur and shadow. Faces disappeared behind monstrous masks. Horns rose against the night sky. Krampus had arrived. Chains dragged across stone. Birch rods struck the ground. The air filled with smoke, firelight, and fear carefully controlled. Children were pulled indoors. Shutters closed. Doors were locked, not against the cold, but against what walked outside. Yet, this was not chaos. It was ritual. Krampusnacht was not a night of random terror, but a public reminder. A reminder that actions had consequences, that winter demanded discipline, that order protected the community. Villagers did not scream in panic. They watched in silence, because everyone understood the truth behind the masks. Fear, when faced together, loses its power. And when the bells finally faded into the mountains, when the fires burned low and streets fell silent, Krampus vanished with the night, leaving behind not destruction, but obedience. And the quiet relief that morning had come. Krampus was never merely a creature to frighten children. He was a mirror, reflecting what society could not ignore. In villages scattered across frozen mountains, survival depended on more than warmth and food. It depended on order, on discipline, and on the understanding that one careless act could doom the many. Fear was not cruelty. It was a tool, a way to teach the young, guide the community, and protect what little they had. Krampus became a psychological teacher. Every tale of chains and birch rods carried a lesson. Obedience was safety. Misbehavior was danger. Not punishment for punishment's sake, but for the survival of all. Humans created him because they needed him. No law could reach the snowy forests. No village council could chase away the long nights or hunger. So they gave form to their fear, gave it shape and voice, and called it Krampus. Through him, morality was neither abstract nor optional. It was real, immediate, inescapable. And though we laugh today at masks and costumes, the shadow he casts still lingers in our stories, reminding us that fear, when respected, can teach, protect, and endure. Krampus was not evil. He was necessary. Not a legend of terror, but a legend of balance, between joy and consequence, between light and shadow, between hope and the quiet dread that keeps hope alive. Though centuries have passed, Krampus has not vanished. Today, he walks again, not through frozen villages, but through festival streets and city parades. In Austria, Germany, and beyond, people don masks, carry bells, and reenact the rituals of old. The shadow of Krampus moves with celebration, yet still commands respect. He has also found his place in stories, films, and popular culture. Movies retell his legend. Books reimagine his punishment. Even as we laugh or shiver, the fascination endures. Why? Because deep within us, something remains unsettled. Modern society may have warmth, abundance, and laws, but we have lost touch with the lessons Krampus once embodied. We no longer feel the cold of consequence. We rarely face fear that teaches, and perhaps that is why, even in celebration, we are drawn to him. Krampus reminds us, There are shadows behind every joy, and ignoring them does not make them disappear. It only makes us forget the balance that once kept us whole. Even now, when streets glow with lights and laughter fills the air, the shadow of Krampus lingers. He does not knock at doors or rattle chains as he once did, but he walks in the quiet corners of conscience, in the fleeting guilt of a misstep, in the whisper of fear we thought we had outgrown. Krampus is no longer just a figure of winter. He's a metaphor, a reminder that every celebration has its shadow, every joy its consequence. We created him to teach, to guard, to preserve. And though centuries have passed, he lives still, in memory, in stories, in the uneasy stirrings of our hearts. Look closely at your world this Christmas. Notice the shadows that flit behind the lights, for he never left. He never truly sleeps. And in the hush between laughter and song, if you listen carefully, you may hear the faint echo of chains, a bell tolling softly, reminding you that fear and joy have always walked together. And so, even as the snow melts and the world forgets the harsh winters of old, Krampus remains. Not in chains or masks, not in roaring fires, but in the quiet corners of our conscience. In every misstep, every small act of selfishness, he waits, not to punish, but to remind us that balance is ancient, enduring, and necessary. Joy and fear, reward and consequence, they have always walked together. And if we dare to remember, even for a moment, the shadow behind celebrations, we see the truth. Some lessons never fade. Thank you for joining me in the hidden world of Krampus. If this story stirred your imagination, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more tales beyond the ordinary. And remember, some shadows never leave, even after the lights go out.